Welcome back, everyone. Today I have one of the top 3 decks of the OP07 format, and that is LUCCI. If you don't know what it does, when attacking you may trash 2 cards from the top of your deck, give up to one of your opponent's character to -1 cost during this turn. That's really good for building up your trash so you have targets in there, and then that free -1 every turn is just amazing. Now to start, I do want to go ahead and just talk about the tech options that I do see a lot of lists in Japan and even here running, but I personally don't like. So that would be stuff like Spanding. I understand why people play like 1 to 2 copies of this, because you can grab it off of Rebecca and play it for free, essentially, and then you can either use it to pull out the Kaku or the Caulifla for a -3 or a -2, draw 2 and trash 2. And then even in some cases, you play the LUCCI if they have enough minuses on board, or have it in hand, like Tempest Kick or the Brooks, etc. Personally, I don't like it. I like to keep my trash full of options, so I don't like putting 3 CP back. Plus, then he sits on the board and he doesn't really do anything, so I don't care for it. And then next we have Brook and Monkey D. Luffy. I see fewer people play this one than this one. In Japan, they mostly go this one over the Monkey D. Luffy. But the Monkey D. Luffy, when attacking, trash up to one of your opponent's character with a cost of 2 or less. Then place any number of character card with a cost of 4 or more from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order. This character gain 1,000 for every 3 card placed at the bottom of the deck. Now, again, like I said, I personally like having my trash full, so I don't like playing this. But the reason people play this is because this isn't a KO effect, so it's a trash effect. Same with this. So in the mirror matches where they drop Sabos or they drop Borsellino and anything that can't be KO'd, you can get rid of it with this. Brook is slightly better because it trashes a 4 or less. If you have the stage plus your LUCCI, you're basically getting rid of up to a 7. And then there's that cheeky second effect that you're going to use a lot less frequently, but actually does come in handy in this format. So your opponent places 3 cards from the trash at the bottom of your deck in any order. So that would be, if you're going against the mirror match, you're going to send cards back to the bottom of the deck so that they can't activate their KO effects, so they can't activate their LUCCI. They don't have the resources to activate their LUCCI or their Spandings, stuff like that. So this is a real good for the mirror match, but it's really, this deck is already super bricky and I had to cut some room and I would rather just cut this. All right, so now into my actual full-on profile. So of course we have 4 Spandam, that's your searcher. Your leader has to be CP, check, and then look at 3, add up to 1 CP other than Spandam and add it to your hand, trash the rest. That's really good. And a lot of times I do find myself with an extra 1 Dawn left, so having the Spandam is really nice to fill up that gap. 2 Surus, unfortunately we couldn't run 4. I mean, this deck is really tight on space and necessaries. Sometimes I do actually drop her, like I said, since I do find myself sometimes with 1 extra. If I have something I need to reduce, she's actually really good to drop for that. Of course, the new replacement for Great Eruption. Draw 1 card, then if you have 10 or more cards in your trash, give up to one of your opponent's character -3. So you can activate whenever, but that -3 is conditional on you having the 10 cards. So you actually really only have to have 9, because as you activate it, it goes to trash first, then you draw, and then it checks the timing. So this card would be the 10th card. So that's really easy, especially in this deck where you're basically milling 2 a turn for free with no other condition. 4 Annie's Lobbies. I was originally running 3, but then I wasn't seeing it enough, and you desperately need this card against the faster paced deck because this deck is super bricky with a bunch of cards that don't have any counters. Now, one thing I want to point out that I did make this mistake when I did play this. Now, even though this is a CP stage, it works for if your leader includes CP, it itself is not a CP. So unfortunately, that means you can't search it with Spandam, you can't send it back with Kaku, etc. to trigger their effects. I get it in the show, Annie's Lobbies is the Judicial Island. I'm just saying they could have, made a CP since it's for the deck. Two Helmeppos, of course, one of our Moria targets, so that we can, KO the 4, bring a 4 down to a 1, or anything else down 3 to, KO with Rob LUCCI. 3 Brooks. I was originally running 2, but like I said, this deck's weakness is the faster pace deck, and this is a must-have to KO the quick attacking decks such as Red Purple Law. So with the stage plus your leader plus a Brook basically gets you the kill on a 4 cost every single turn. So your opponent will also then have to take an attack to deal with the Brook. 4 Rebecca's, must have at 4. She's really good for cycling your 2K counters that you don't really have that much of, but in the late game, and because she's a blocker, like, we're using her for the Rebecca Sabo combo when we're at like 9 or 10 Dawn. So we're gonna drop a Rebecca, grab a Sabo out of trash, play the Sabo, and then both blockers are protected. And the blockers are absolutely necessary because we have such few counters in this deck. But if you do end up playing her early, or off of Moria or something, now in the Gecko Moria deck, I never liked playing Rebecca off of Gecko Moria, off of the ACOS Gecko Moria. But in this deck, because we have all the reductions, playing Rebecca doesn't feel so bad because we can then just play, have all the cost reductions, and then use Rebecca to play a Brook to KO something as well. So it actually feels decent to play her off of the ACOS Gecko Moria if you don't have like 2 targets you want to kill. Of course, our biggest killer is our Rob LUCCI, so a must-have at 4. Now he is placed any 3 cards, so that's actually really nice because we don't have so many CP targets that we can send back. We'd like to keep a lot of them in trash. I like to, keep a variety. Obviously, you can send Tempest Kicks that you see back to the bottom. It doesn't matter. You can't recycle those. But, I'd like to keep a Caulifla. I'd like to keep a Kaku. And obviously, I'd keep as many of these Rob LUCCIs in trash as I can. Even though I really only need 1, maybe 2. If my opponent doesn't KO the one I bring out, first one out on board. And then we have 4 Kaku, a searchable 2K. I have not used it for his on play to put 2 back. But if I did need it, that's another reason why I keep the CPs in trash. So, and then my opponent's character gets -3. Now, this is one of the cards that people do play off of Spondine, but since I personally don't play Spondine, I don't need it. 4 Cauliflas, absolute must have. Not only is she a 2K counter, but because, the deck has a lot of bricks, a lot of stuff that you don't need to see 2 of. Like, for example, once you see 1 stage, the rest of the stage in the deck is dead. And sometimes you end up with them in hand. And what do? You draw 2 and then trash 2. And then, if you did desperately need a -2 somewhere. But, early enough game, I like to drop it. I like to pitch the extra cards I don't want to have or even need to have yet. So also really good for getting certain targets in your trash, like the Rob LUCCI, like the Helmeppo. 3 Kakus. I really like this card. You may place 2 cards with a type including CP from your trash at the bottom of your deck in any order. KO up to one of your opponent's character with a cost of 3 or less. So with your leader plus your stage, that's KOing a 6 without any other reduction, like without paying anything basically, which is amazing. So this card, with 1 Tempest Kick, you can get up to 9, and then, anything else, you can basically KO any size in this deck. 4 Sabos. I think it's a must-have at 4 because 1, blocker is incredibly important. I need this in trash early, or if I, go first, I can drop this to fix my hand. Fixing the hand is really important, and fixing the hand also, like I said, comes with fixing or having certain targets in your trash rather than in your hand, because stuff like, without the counters and you want in trash, like, for example, Rob LUCCI, you want that in trash, and you can't get rid of it in any other way because we're not discarding in any other way other than Sabo and Caulifla. All right, now here is where I do differ a little bit. A lot of the decks in Japan play of the 4 bosses. There are 4 bosses that you can run in this deck. That is Sabo, Gecko Moria, and Isho. No one is arguing that you don't play 4 Gecko Moria. Like, Gecko Moria is a must-have. Same combo. You play a Suru or a Helmeppo and then play Rob Lucci and KO something. That's at least in the Gecko Moria version in the Thriller Bark deck. But in this deck, same combo, except we also have the additional choices of playing Rebecca off of it and then playing Brooke, only because we have all the free minuses from the leader and the stage. So that still gets rid of a 4 cost, still gets rid of an attacker that can deal you damage. So it's a little bit more flexible in this deck. Unfortunately, what we give up between this and the Thriller Bark deck is this no longer can come back from trash like we could do in the Thriller Bark deck with Dr. Hogback. And then here are the differences where Isho, it's complicated. It's good if you go second and you drop it on your 8th turn where you're not in life-threatening situations yet, where your opponent hasn't built up a crazy big board and they've been taking the damages, and then you drop this to rip. But simply because everyone is running this, people are kind of behaving with their hand size. They're not, stockpiling a bunch of cards in hand because they know people play Isho. I feel like I have to play it now just to keep the status quo, because if I suddenly get rid of it, then my opponents are going to start stockpiling again. So the Rip 2 is really good. The give all your opponents character -3 is okay. It's really good, don't get me wrong, but with all the other reductions and easy and cheap reduction that this deck already has, I don't feel like it's necessary. It's best against decks like Innow, where they just slap down a bunch of big cost at the end. That makes sense. I don't have enough resources to keep on reducing. I don't have an infinite number of Tempest Kicks to keep reducing, their 9s and 10s down to a targetable range without this. So I am keeping it in for now at 2. Unfortunately, we can't play any, searches for that, so don't see it too often. But simply the fact that it exists makes my opponent, behave with their hand size. And then me personally, I like Sabo over Stussy. If I did say, let's say I don't have the cost reductions, let's say I don't have the stage, but obviously I still have my leader. This card can still KO pretty big. A 5 and a 3. And because we play so many bricks in this deck, we can trash those and KO. So this is basically in the deck for slowing down the faster pace decks. So like against Reparable Law, and I don't have time to set up stuff, and I go second, my first 8 Dawn turn, I can, attack with a LUCCI, reduce one of their 4s down to a 3, and then drop a Sabo, KO 2 cards, for example, against the Red Purple. So it's really good to slow them way down without me having to drop anything else. So I like Sabo for that. I actually really wish I could bump it up to 3. This deck is just super tight, but currently it's working fine with just 2. And then also, if I did use Rob Lucci for mirror matches, if I did use Rob Lucci plus the stage, it could actually get an 8 cost down to a 5 to hit for that first one without any extra other cards. No Tempest Kick, no Suru, no Helmeppo, etc. So I really do love Sabo. I really wish I could bump it up. All right, and this will be the deck I will do a couple deck battle videos against. So keep an eye out, and thanks for watching.